This is CBN NewsWatch.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for CBN NewsWatch for this Thursday, June 11th. I'm George Thomas. Both Republicans and Democrats in Congress are working on police reform, but are approaching it from very different angles. Some on the left are pushing to defund police departments, while President Trump hits the road to talk about it. CBN News Washington correspondent Jenna Browder has the story.
The White House confirms to CBN News that the president will head to Dallas today for a roundtable with faith leaders, law enforcement, and small business owners. They'll talk about race relations and police reform. Thursday's trip comes after President Trump met Wednesday with African-American faith leaders at the White House, and after House hearings Wednesday on police brutality.
George wasn't hurting anyone that day.
Philon S. Floyd, George Floyd's brother, testifying about the pain he felt watching his brother die, helpless on the ground while begging for his mother.
He didn't deserve to die over $20. I'm asking you, is that what a black man is worth? $20? This is 2020. Enough is enough. The people marching in the streets are telling you enough is enough.
Democrats and Republicans with the White House are working on police reform measures, as some on the left push to defund the police. Facing increasing pressure to weigh in, Joe Biden told CBS News Monday he does not support the idea. Other opponents include Senators Cory Booker and Bernie Sanders. Former NFL player, investment banker, and minister Jack Brewer also took issue with it Wednesday on CBN's Faith Nation.
The communities that need law and order the most are the underserved communities, the mothers that are single, the elderly people who don't have the resources to protect themselves. If you go into the community, right, and you go in and you ask the families in these communities that are underserved, they're going to tell you that they need more police, not less.
Pastor Darrell Scott also warned about the dangers of taking away resources from police departments, pointing to what's happened in cities like Cleveland, where police budgets and presence have been cut.
The murder rates have climbed. The property crime is at record levels. Aggravated robbery statistics are higher. Drug sales, drug use, drug abuse is higher. Drug and alcohol-related motor vehicle accidents are the highest they've ever been.
Brewer says real change starts with faith and family.
And the problems start from fatherlessness. Our father and our family units, particularly in the black community, have been ripped apart. And so what you're seeing now is you're seeing that, you're 5 times more likely to go to prison if you don't have a father in the house. It starts with our family, with Christian values, and stop trying to push out all of the godly principles that our country was founded on. We got to get the fear of God back in our police department, in our communities, in our kids. And I think that's our answer.
In Washington, Jenna Browder, CBN News.
Thank you, Jenna. The Justice Department faces accusation of using its power to benefit a political ally of the president. Retired U.S. District Judge John Gleeson was called in to advise on the criminal case against former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn. Gleeson is arguing against a Justice Department request to drop the case, saying, quote, "The government has engaged in highly irregular conduct." Gleeson advised they dismiss the DOJ request, saying there was, quote, "clear evidence of gross prosecutorial abuse." The Justice Department dropped the case after reviewing newly disclosed FBI emails and notes regarding Flynn. Many political analysts say they were clear evidence of entrapment. The number of COVID cases crossed the 2 million mark. However, cities and states are pushing forward with reopening, with the spike in cases expected as cities and states ease lockdowns. 21 states report a rise in the number of those diagnosed. In Alaska, between March and May, the state saw 460 tests come back positive for the virus. Now, in the last week alone, more than 100 confirmed cases. Overall, the U.S. has seen nearly 1,200,000 cases and just over 112,000 deaths. Some doctors say they believe lockdowns and shutdowns are doing more harm than good. And now some 1,200 are joining together to warn of how much higher death rate due to the decision to tell people to stay at home. Paul Strand reports.
SecondOpinionProject.com is the gathering place where doctors are presenting their case for why the nation's lockdown to fight coronavirus has been a medical disaster.
We're looking at an increase in tens or hundreds of thousands of just suicides alone from the increased unemployment.
Cases of depression or drug abuse that were in check have gotten worse. We're seeing that all over the country, every town, every city.
They say of coronavirus,
the message has been disseminated that this is some terrible infection that is a killer, that everybody is at risk of dying.
10 times as many people die from other things on any given day.
But we know that 99.7% of people that get infected with COVID survive.
The risk of death in children from flu, seasonal flu, is 20 to 30 times higher than that of the coronavirus. And yet we have never closed schools. We have never asked children or teachers to wear masks. In my opinion, this is child abuse. I am absolutely appalled, and I think it makes no scientific or rational sense whatsoever.
We cannot lock up our young generation in the house for the next 12 or 18 months while we're waiting for a vaccine.
First of all, there has never been a successful coronavirus vaccine. Never.
Some 1,200 doctors are involved in the Second Opinion Project. Many tell of people who died because they were too scared to go to the hospital.
He declined because he was afraid he would catch the virus. He basically waited to the last minute. 911 was called, EMS showed up, and he, arrested right there, had CPR and didn't make it.
And as he got weaker and weaker, they didn't know what to do because they were getting constant bombardment from the news saying, stay home, don't go to the hospital, you're gonna get COVID. We coded him for about 30 minutes and he passed away.
Even Dr. Fauci has warned lockdowns could cause irreparable damage.
This is not a money for lives situation. This is a lives for lives situation.
These doctors, representing more than 21,000 years of practice, have even written to the White House to warn of the millions of casualties to come because of the lockdowns. Paul Strand, CBN News, Washington.
Thank you, Paul. The ministry of one Birmingham, Alabama church is brought to a screeching halt in parts of the city after one complaint. It resulted in city leaders revoking Church of the Highlands' lease of school property for 2 of its services in the area and canceling the church's volunteer work in the community, which included a health clinic, mentoring, tutoring, and much more. It all started when one woman complained about Pastor Chris Hodges liking tweets by President Donald Trump. She said it was, quote, culturally insensitive and troubling. According to Tony Perkins with the Family Research Council, the pastor even apologized if his actions hurt anyone. Perkins says none of that mattered to the mob, who not only ignored Pastor Chris's work in the neighborhoods, but the church's standing in the minority community. At least a third of the Highlands congregations are Black and Hispanic. Imagine if we held everyone to that standard. If we combed through these public servants' accounts, what would we find? Political objectivity, or the raging hatred and bitterness that's led to these baseless attacks. Coming up, private prisons thriving on the American taxpayers' dime.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep as the world watches from the outside.
It's a big diplomatic tug of war here in the Middle East.
Go inside the story with Jerusalem Dateline.
Israeli archaeologists are talking about a discovery that could change the thinking about the Temple Mount.
Join CBN Jerusalem Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell and get the biblical perspective on the events shaping the world.
It's what starts in Israel then ends up going to other places.
Watch Jerusalem Dateline Friday night at 9:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
Welcome back to the broadcast. America is a nation of criminals, and locking up the largest prison population in the world comes with a hefty price tag. But guess what? For some corporations, it is a major money-making enterprise. Private prisons have been thriving, raking in cash to put people in cages. But as Jennifer Wishon reports, these prisons for profit are now falling out of favor.
Private prisons have been around for decades. They promote themselves as cost-effective community partners, primed to save taxpayer dollars. But critics say that's because they cut corners, creating unsafe conditions. It's big business. Major private prison companies are even publicly traded, and last year raked in billions of profits. According to the Sentencing Project, they operate in 29 states, and the Federal Bureau of Prisons relies on them too. John Pfaff, professor at Fordham Law School and author of Locked In, The True Causes of Mass Incarceration and How to Achieve Real Reform, says even though private prisons only house about 9% of the total prison population, they grab the most attention.
I think people feel like there's something distinctly morally repugnant about paying cash to put people in cages.
They get paid for each inmate locked up in their facilities. In 2012, Corrections Corporation of America, now known as CoreCivic, offered a shocking deal. The company would purchase prisons in 48 states if the states would guarantee a 90% occupancy rate.
I'm not saying corporations are evil, but corporations exist for one thing: to make money, maximum profit. That's okay if you're making widgets or toothpaste, but when you're dealing with people and you're making money off of prison, you're starting to treat people like they're toothpaste.
Jesus Cardenas was locked up for check fraud. He served part of his time in a state prison before being transferred to a private one, and says he immediately noticed a difference in the level of security.
They were just going through the motions. These officers that were there were just drawing a paycheck.
He says fights like this one at a private correction center in Idaho were a daily occurrence. And unless someone was severely hurt, he says they went unnoticed. ICE also contracts with private facilities. In a federal lawsuit filed last month, a Mexican woman says within hours of being deported, she and 2 other women were taken from their dorms and raped by officials at a facility run by CoreCivic in Houston. Criminologist Fran Buntman says when a government detains or sentences someone, it has an obligation to see it through.
We've taken away their liberty rights to control their own lives. We as a society and the government as the institution looking after them actually have a responsibility to their welfare. We as a society cannot subcontract out that responsibility to a private agency.
Incarceration is a big ticket item. States spend $50 billion a year. And all said, when you factor in police and prosecutors, it costs a total of $200 billion tax dollars to round up, prosecute, and keep inmates behind bars. Over the last year, activists successfully waged campaigns to squeeze private prisons financially, pressuring half a dozen major banks to cut off their financing. Investors pulled back too, and that could keep the companies from growing. Professor Pfaff says some private prisons do operate better than others, just like those in the public system, and points out state-owned prisons also have incentives to keep their doors open. It's just less transparent. No matter where inmates serve time, he encourages Americans to focus on the power of redemption.
Jesus never wrote anybody off, right? You know, that very last moment, he didn't care what the person next to him on the cross was up there for. And I think that there's a very important lesson in what he didn't say and what he didn't ask about how we should view, even those who have done amongst the worst things possible, that we should never just throw them away.
During the last decade, the overall prison rate has fallen by 15%, but America still locks up more people than any other country, and private prisons appear here to stay, at least for now. Jennifer Wishon, CBN News.
On October 1st, 1961, history was made when a tiny station began transmitting the first signals of the Christian Broadcasting Network.
CBN, the Christian Broadcasting Network.
And now, a new era has begun with the all-new CBN News Channel.
Just moments ago, the Iron Dome intercepted an incoming rocket right on the Gaza border.
And ministering in this area, spiritual warfare is definitely involved.
A 24/7 news network, bringing you the news you want from a source you can trust.
In Kenya, 40% of the medical services are actually provided by these Christian hospitals.
Let's talk about the economy.
Believers here are joining together to win people to Jesus Christ.
All your favorite shows now in one place. Go to CBNNewsChannel.com to find out how to get the CBN News Channel on your TV all day, every day. CBN News. Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
Welcome back. Democrats and Republicans are sounding the alarm about possible vote fraud after primary election irregularities this week in Georgia. Voting machine malfunctions, provisional ballot shortages, missing and late arriving absentee ballots are of concern. Could this be a harbinger for the upcoming presidential election? On this week's episode of The Global Lane, Republican National Committee co-chair Tommy Hicks Jr. says the RNC is spending some $20 million nationwide to protect election integrity.
You know, we're very focused on protecting your vote, and we're going to spend $20 million litigating to make sure that these frivolous lawsuits that are taking place on the other side don't cancel out the legal votes of the American people. And we've launched a website, protectthevote.com, that goes through state by state exactly what we're doing to make sure that your vote counts.
Well, you're talking about these lawsuits. Now, mail-in balloting. Many Republicans oppose it. Democrats support it. Why is that? And what do you think will happen with this push by several states to do it? I mean, some states like Colorado already do it.
Well, it's ripe for fraud. And what they want to do is they want to mail ballots, live ballots, to all registered voters, not active. So, for instance, in San Diego recently, we had 500,000 inactive voters kicked off the voter file. And these are people who have moved or have died. And still, you have 117% of the residents of San Diego County, California, as registered voters. So you know at least 17% of those votes are fraud. So we can't let that happen. Mail-in voting is ripe for fraud.
And I think they're not really purging these rules, are they? I mean, maybe that's an effort that should be done.
Yeah, absolutely. People who've moved to other states, people who have died should not be able to vote.
Well, and that's where voter ID laws come in, I guess. On another issue of concern for the GOP, it seems that North Carolina has now lost the Republican convention this summer, Tommy, because of its failure to reopen from the COVID-19 shutdown. Now, I know Republican Party officials reportedly visited Jacksonville this week, trying to figure out if that city has enough hotel rooms for a convention. Why Jacksonville? And I'm sure Florida Governor Ron DeSantis would be quite welcoming.
lots of people would be very welcoming, and lots of cities have stepped up to try to welcome this celebration. It's really unfortunate that the governor, Democrat governor of North Carolina, would not allow this to take place the way it should be. It's really bad for the businesses of downtown Charlotte. It would have been a $250 million shot in the arm at a very critical time as we reopen our economy. And we had been working for over a year, well over a year, with people on the ground for over a year working for that convention. And you know what? We've got a great team, and wherever it ends up being, wherever the celebration ends up being, we're going to be able to pull it off and do a great job celebrating.
Just be careful with Florida. Hurricane season in August. Recent polls show the president may face an uphill battle in the race against Joe Biden. We know that social media may be one key in winning the election. Attorney General Barr has once again expressed concern about social media platforms and their censorship. What impact could social media censorship have on the president's campaign and those of conservative candidates this fall?
Well, it's very important. I mean, censorship is a big deal, especially when you talk about a president who has the ability to connect directly with so many tens of millions of Americans through his Twitter, Facebook, and other accounts. And this is a president who likes to talk directly to the American people. He likes to be out there having rallies, talking directly through the crisis, talking directly to the American people. And I think it's important that they not censor him or anybody for that matter.
And finally, how do you think the COVID-19 shutdowns followed by the George Floyd protests and riots will affect the electability of this president? He's taken a lot of criticism on both.
Well, you know what? The transition back into greatness has begun. Last week, we had a great jobs report. 2.5 million jobs were created. The experts expected us to lose 8.5 million. So we're seeing light at the end of the tunnel in terms of the economic recovery. And we know this president built it once. He's the right president to build it again. And I think you're also seeing, the president was very quick to condemn what happened to George Floyd and to seek justice for his family. But he was also quick to condemn the riots that were taking place. There's a big difference between riots and protests. And I think when he declared Antifa a terrorist organization, that was a really good thing, and the violence quickly stopped.
Not to mention COVID-19.
Yeah, it stopped too, didn't it?
Yeah. Well, thank you. We appreciate you, Tommy. Thank you for your time and insights.
Thank you so much, guys. Take care.
You can watch more of The Global Lane tonight at 9:30 Eastern here on the CBN News Channel.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
I'm Ephraim Graham, and this is Studio 5. Cruise with me as I discover the good things happening in the world of music, sports, television, and movies.
The fact that Ryan Coogler was going to be directing the film, I knew that something special was going to happen.
We'll chat with artists at the forefront of entertainment and explore the connection between popular culture and faith.
I asked my pastor, I said, well, does that mean I'm supposed to be a preacher? He says, well, no, you already have a pulpit.
Watch Studio 5 Wednesday night at 9:30.
Remember for a moment what it was like to be a child. You believed every story you were told. You saw a world full of endless possibilities. What stories will the world's orphaned and at-risk children believe? We believe the Bible tells the only story truly worth believing. We believe that every child should have the opportunity to dream, the chance to take challenges and turn them into possibilities, the chance to stand on the promises of God, to recognize their place in the greatest story ever told. They have their whole lives ahead of them. Theirs is a world of endless possibilities. They are looking for a story to believe. We will tell them that story. Will you join us?
New York City is slowly reopening as the COVID crisis winds down. But at the height of the pandemic, a nurse from Virginia responded to the need for healthcare workers to volunteer to help. What makes Rachel Hotley's story unique is how she got to the Big Apple. Eric Phillips explains.
Rachel tells me she felt led of the Lord to answer the call, and about 2 weeks after she accepted a temporary position at a local New York hospital, she and her husband set out, not by plane or by car, but by their boat, appropriately named Turning Points.
It wasn't a leisurely vacation sale, I'll tell you that, and it was just a big leap to mobilize and to take that step of faith.
And without much hesitation, Rachel and her husband jumped into the deep end, almost literally.
It didn't take but 10 seconds before we were both kind of, full bore.
Rachel was working as a pre-op nurse in Lynchburg, Virginia, when attention shifted to the pandemic. As elective surgeries were canceled, she wasn't really busy. Around that time, recruiters started calling to see if Rachel would be interested in helping in New York, especially since she had worked as an intensive care nurse.
And I think the Lord just really put on my heart, like, I've prepared you for this. You have the skills, the training necessary. You're not being utilized where you are. You should go.
After quitting her job, things began to fall into place. After hearing Rachel's story, a New York marina waived its $10,000 monthly rental fee. That's when she, her husband, and a friend set sail up the eastern seaboard. They felt it would be safer than flying, plus they could live on the boat and host other medical workers in need of housing.
Especially in the middle of a pandemic, just in looking at places to rent and whatnot up here, we were thinking how special it would be to have our own place, for sanity and just for cleanliness sake.
Looking back, the 34-hour trip that landed them in New York on Easter Sunday may have been the easy part compared to NYU Langone Hospital in Brooklyn.
Things, especially in the hospital, were just chaotic. There were so many patients, so many people dying, and it was just a really tough environment to walk into. I tried to prepare for mentally, but it's something you just can't really prepare for until you actually see it with your own eyes.
I was underprepared, especially in the beginning of their tenure, for how they were going to be emotionally handling the time in the hospital.
They say one thing has made the difference: God's grace.
The unending grace that he gives so I can give my patients, and the love so I can give my patients. If I get sick, Lord willing, I'll probably be okay. But even if I'm not okay, no matter what happens, to God be the glory.
I'm very proud of her humility in that act of service and her willingness to take that on. We're here because we believe that God has us on this planet to be disciple makers.
Rachel's contract has her in New York until the middle of June, and it could be extended if necessary. She says she's okay with that. When she returns home, she plans to complete her nurse practitioner's degree, and then it's on to the next adventure. Eric Phillips, CBN News, Washington.
Wow, what a great service. Well, that's it for this edition of CBN NewsWatch. Stay up to date anytime, cbnnews.com or on the CBN News Channel. Have a great day, everyone.